those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. I need a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 23rd. Councillor English, Councillor Orlando. All those in favor? Motion's carried. And is there any business arising from those minutes of January 23rd? Okay. A couple announcements that I would like to make. One is the problems that we've been having on the highway of late are a real concern to council, to city staff, and of course to the community. And when we have closures, which we know living in this part of the country we are going to have, that there's going to be traffic backed up. And but I think that having traffic backed up that puts the community in a lockdown, because nobody can move on the highway, nobody can move across town from Columbia Park to the community. I think that it's completely unacceptable. We are supposed to have a plan in place with MOTI on how to mitigate when those things happen. And I just want to reassure the community that we will be meeting again with MOTI, talking about this plan and trying to work towards this not happening, especially to the extent of what happened just over a week ago. So basically just an information for council and the community that what's happened is not acceptable, and there is going to be more discussions on that. The next thing I'd like to bring up is that I had a meeting with a citizen who's proposed a really unique idea that I like, and it's taking the City Hall building and putting lights on it, and lights that would change colors to reflect what's going on either in the community or in the province or nationally, internationally, and that's showing support for things like Mental Health Awareness Week, heart and stroke, things like that, and of course designing lights that would enhance the architecture features of the building, the City Hall building. I think would look great. We also have to be respectful of our dark skies policy, so having lights that shine down and wash the side of the building I think would be acceptable. But we have various meetings over the last few years between staff and council talked about a revitalization of the City Hall building, and Ms. Lowe has been able to secure a grant for part of that. We are still looking to find money to do that. And what I would like to suggest to council is that this idea be referred back to staff for when this building is looking at being revitalized, that this be looked at and incorporated into the building. Of course, it'll be the council today to be approved, but it'll be costed out, figured out how we're going to do it, what works with our policy. And I think we also have to look at, we have a no proclamation policy, so you'd have to have a pretty strong wording around what is the type of things that we would be doing and not doing, and I think that's all part of the package. So not sure how council feels about this, but I think that if council is in support of it, it would go back to staff to do a study and look at it and see how we can incorporate it into the building. Any comments or questions?
Your Worship, do you need a motion in that regard, or will it just go to staff?
That would probably be the best thing. Sure, that would be okay. Then
I'll make a motion that it be referred to staff for some
we have a motion by Councillor Brothers. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor English. And I'm looking for any discussion, comments, or questions on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. We have one delegation today, and Melissa Hemphill with the Local Food Initiative Market is here. And yes, great. Thank you.
Hi there, thanks for having me today. I just want to talk to you a little bit about the Local Food Initiatives Farmers Market and how things are going, so you're up to speed. And you've all seen that package, and so I'll brief through it pretty quickly and give time for your questions. But this market was born out of controversy, but I think it's structured for success. So just the history of it, I'm sure you remember about a year ago, Wildflight Farms wasn't invited back to the Revelstoke Farm and Craft Market. And that became an issue for me because as food security coordinator, that meant a loss of 56,000 pounds of food to our community. So an issue of food access. I worked with Lori Donato and Patty Larson to try and mediate with that group to see if we can figure out a way through this, but that wasn't successful. So I took this to the Local Food Initiative. Full disclosure, I'm a board member, but wore my food security coordinator hat in all regards to this issue. Took it to the board. They liked the idea. We did a community survey at a winter market, and there was lots of great feedback and support for the idea. And so we pushed forward. So there was a whole lot of development to happen in 5 weeks. It involved pulling together a market advisory committee, working with the LFI to approve that committee and its members, setting a budget, developing policies, which was a really tricky one. We wanted to make sure that we did our research and looked at policies all over the province and the country and the US to come up with some fair policies. And once we'd set that, we applied for a permit. We decided the best time and location was in the 200 block of Mackenzie Avenue. Best for customers, best for vendors. Saturday morning seems to be the time for shopping down there, so we stuck with that. And then we went through the onerous task of reaching out for vendor applications and sorting through those, and of course paying all those fees to the city. And so on that market advisory committee, which I think is real key to the success of this project, so I sit on there as the chair, and then we have 2 representatives from the LFI, 2 from the local businesses on that 200 block, 2 vendor representatives who are vendors at that market, and 2 community representatives. So we felt this was really important to bring all issues and viewpoints to the table so everybody could be represented, and we could just look at everything. And in order to do that fairly, we decided to do things by consensus so that all of those different groups could be represented fairly. And then we formed a subcommittee from each of those groups to help with the vendor selection, so making sure that they fit the criteria in our policies. The other key is to the success is the setup. So rather than blocking the businesses, we decided to put our vendors back to back along the midline of the road. And then in terms of who goes where, there's a lot to consider in terms of the neighboring businesses. We don't want to put a coffee vendor right in front of a coffee shop. We don't want to have lineups blocking any businesses or any other vendors. We don't want to have competing smells. We want to have complementing vendors, like having a distillery next to a coffee maker. And we want to make sure that everybody's electrical needs can be met as best possible. So there are some significant challenges that we had to overcome, the biggest being electricity. So on that block, there's only 3 circuits to work with, and the cords have to run overhead. So it was a bit of a challenge lining up those vendors where they need to be and making sure everybody's safe. The alternative of using generators is nobody likes to do that. They're noisy and just change the atmosphere of the venue. The other issue was parked cars. There is new no parking signs for that time frame, which were fairly effective, but a number of weeks there was a car parked right in the way, you can see in the picture there. So blocking that vendor, blocking the flow of traffic, blocking an exit route or safety route. We worked with the RCMP to try and contact the car owners to ask them to come and move them, but it continued to be an issue. Patios also became an issue when the Modern got their patio. Jose from the Modern's on our market advisory committee, so we knew it was coming, but it still caused us to lose 3 stalls. But we still love them anyways, it's okay. Also, competing events, the car show and the Canada Day Parade were an issue for us. The vendors don't like to get moved to another block. It interrupts their sales. It just makes it a challenge for the market, but we made do. Through the community survey that the LFI did, we got a lot of feedback about dogs and found that both from vendors and from customers that it's just not a great place to have dogs for personal safety and for food safety. So we developed a no dog policy, but it was pretty tricky to enforce. And then also to listen to customer demand was having live music down there. Also, lots of issues to consider in there, so we did our research and developed a policy there too. And what we got was a wonderful, vibrant market. I think you'll all agree that it went really well. We had a lot of people down there shopping. We had a lot of new vendors. It went really well. So the success is, it's a bigger market for our community. We've got some great relationships between the market and the neighboring businesses. We've got a new employment position with the market manager, got some great media coverage. It proved to be a bonus for the LFI financially. It became a social enterprise, which we didn't expect. We thought we'd run at a loss coming into the season so late, but it proved to be great, and excellent exposure for the LFI and all their events as well. We were able to support a couple of youth entrepreneurs, so some kids, I think a 7 and a 10-year-old, were able to come down and sell their wares, which was pretty neat. And lots of nonprofits were able to get tables right in the heart of the market, which was great exposure for them. And so we did customer and vendor surveys at the end of the season, and it was an excellent response. People are really happy with what we're doing, and will respond to any issues that were found in there. We got vendors all the way from Coston, all over the interior BC. It was really successful in that way. A lot of new vendors to the community, a lot of local vendors who hadn't been able to get a spot at the market before. So it was great to see all those new vendors available to our community. The farmers market is a place where people who don't have the opportunity to be in a different type of retail space can come to the market and flog their wares there, which is great. In July, we became members of the BC Association of Farmers Markets. It was a big deliberation on their part to make sure that we met their standards, and we did in the end, which was great. And then a month later, we were approved into the Farmers Market Coupon Program. And from that, we had some great uptake of that at our market. So you can see down at the bottom there in our list of stats that over $3,000 of coupons were redeemed at our market. So about 30% of what was used in Revelstoke, and that's coming into the program in August rather than May. So pretty significant there. And then up at the top there, we had over 71 different vendors apply to the market. 20 of them became full-time vendors, and then a good selection of the other types of vendors. We're always looking for more farm vendors, of course. So the future for us, we're just going to keep on keeping on. We think we've set things up well, and we're happy to continue. We're accepting new members for the advisory committee, if you know of anybody. And we're going to continue to engage with the community and see what the support is and what people would like to see. We're going to continue with that nutrition coupon program, and there's whispers of CBT helping to support that program, so I'll be learning about that soon at a conference in Cranbrook. Cranbrook. We're already accepting vendors for 2018, so things are rolling. And as I mentioned before, looking for more food vendors. It's a farmer's market first. So any questions?
Questions, Councillor Nixon?
Just kudos. I know that you were one of the positive people that stood up and looked for a solution for this controversy and just went down the road the right way.
Thanks.
And food security, and I'm really glad to hear you say that food vendors are first. So the policies that you have, do they guide how the market picks the 2018 vendors, and distance to town, like local?
Yeah, there's a priority on local vendors. You're stretching my memory to remember if there's a priority on farm vendors. I think there is. I'd like to think there is amongst the committee members for sure. But there's all different types of categories that people can apply under.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brothers?
Just want to say, Melissa, thanks again for your help, and I know Lori did a lot of work on this just to get it working smoothly, and it was a lot of time and effort and controversy. But, you know, I live downtown. The market puts a smile on my face every time I see it on Saturday. It is a big part of this community and an important part of this community, not only for food security, but just as a meeting place, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's wonderful.
Great, thanks. I think one thing I didn't mention is that we all know the controversy, we all know the history, we all know the separation, but if you're not from here, you have no idea. And you come downtown and there's a 2-block farmers market that's fabulous. And I think that's really important, that we're not we're not talking about the controversy that's behind us, and we're moving forward, and it's a great tourist attraction for our community.
Councillor Orlando.
Yeah, again, thanks for being thoughtful as you work through the process and got everything in place. Of course, the Saturday market's fantastic, so it's great to see. I just wanted to ask a question about the electricity issue. So are you guys working through that, or you said it was a challenge, but is it holding things back, or are you guys trying to take next steps on that?
Well, I've spoken with Lori about the possibility of expanding the electrical capacity down there. It would definitely help us out, as well as other events that go on downtown, for sure. Does it impede what we're doing? Yeah, it does. There are, it's first come, first serve. And so if a wonderful food vendor comes along and we just can't provide the electricity for them, it's sorry. So it is a limiting factor for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments? I want to thank you. It was a great presentation,
Great.
and I would just want to echo what everybody else has said, that the farmers market is has a huge impact on the community, well received, and obviously there's a lot of great vendors in the community and the surrounding area that provide a lot of really neat services and goods to the community and the visitors. So keep up the good work, and
Thanks.
looking forward to every Saturday.
Great, yeah. There is, sorry, you reminded me of one more thing, is that the Food Connect program through Community Connections that collects recovered food, collects from the farmers market, and this has been a huge increase to that. I think last summer, our biggest week got 258 pounds of fresh food from the farmers market. So there's all kinds of benefits that go on. So yeah, thanks for your time.
So we're moving into 8A, Councillor.
Oh, yeah, on item 8A, Part 1, I have a conflict, as I'm a board member on the Columbia Valley Skateboard Association.
If I can bring that forward, do you want me to do it in two parts?
Yes.
Separate parts? All right. Part 1, that the draft long-term capital plan for Parks, Recreation and Culture be approved with the addition of $93,000 funding for the Columbia Valley Skateboard Association skate park project at Kovach Park, and $10,000 be reallocated from the Trails Master Plan implementation capital project to the Revelstoke Cycling Association trail maintenance program.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Hang on a second.
Part 2.
Hang on a second.
Oh, sorry.
Does he come? Yeah, he comes back in.
This is not having to do
Yeah,
with
okay,
Aaron.
sorry.
Item 2.
Item 2, that the draft long-term capital plan for water utility, Big Eddy Water Utility, Sewer Utility, and vehicle and equipment be approved as presented.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item B. Okay, Councillor, yeah.
I'll bring that one forward. Item 8B, I move that the, no, I had a conflict on this one. Sorry, I got to step out. Sorry, my mistake.
Councillor English, would you like to make a motion?
I would, thank you, Your Worship, that the Street Fest funding of $5,000 be included in the core budget.
Motion by Councillor English, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Yeah, we're on economic development. I'm sure that our councillor can come back in now. Not going to risk it. You've been on holidays. You need the exercise.
I can bring the next one forward. So wish. Item 8B2, I move that the non-core operating spending package for community economic development be approved as presented.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor Brothers. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
I'll keep going, Your Worship. Item 8B3, that I move that a part-time victim services position be considered during future planning with the province and that alternate funding sources be explored.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor Brothers. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Item 8B4, that I move that the non-core operating spending package for development services for the building inspector position at $60,000 be approved.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
And item 8B5, I move that the non-core operating spending package for engineering for a civil tech at $70,000 be approved.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor Brothers. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item C. That's a motion that we're putting on because it's a recommendation from committee of the whole. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Okay, I'll do that, Your Worship. That a letter be written to Transport Canada to request an earlier inspection date for the helipad at Queen Victoria Hospital.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor English. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Number 9A.
I'd be happy to bring that forward, Your Worship. That the Municipal Ticket Information System Amendment Bylaw 2217 be read a first, second, and third time.
Motion by Councillor English, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Number 11A, I want to hold off on it. This is the 306 First Street West bike shop. We have two people on council, myself and Councillor Orlando, that would be declaring a conflict, and because we would then not have a quorum, this item would not be dealt with. We have a councillor that has been stuck behind, I think, Avalanche or something at Three Valley Gap, and they're moving now, so I'm going to move that to the end of the meeting, and hopefully we can still deal with this rather than deferring it to the February 27th meeting. Okay? I think it's February 27th? Yes. So we're going to move into item 11B. If somebody would like to make a motion.
I'll bring it forward, Your Worship. That the application to rezone 218 3rd Street East, Lot 15, Block 27, Section 27, Township 23, Range 2, west of the 6th Meridian, Kootenay District Plan 636A and Parcel A, of Lot 16, Block 27, Section 27, Township 23, Range 2, west of the 6th Meridian, Kootenay District Plan 636A, from single and two-family residential district R2 to single and two-family residential vacation rental district R2V, be kept in the queue for rezoning at council's discretion upon adoption of a two-zone vacation rental zoning amendment bylaw, and that adoption of a zoning amendment bylaw for the vacation rental be subject to approval of a development variance permit that allows for a reduction in the total number of required off-street parking spaces for the subject property.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Nixon. I have a question, Mr. Whitehead. So what we're really doing is we're just holding this, and then we're going to have, because we're not setting a public hearing, we're waiting until the two-zone vacation rental is in place, and then we're going to set a public hearing date for this.
Correct, Your Worship. There's a number of applications waiting in this queue, and they would be brought, I assume, at the same time for council consideration.
And some of those have already been subject to a public hearing.
I believe that some have, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear what we're doing, and sometimes gets confusing. Yeah. Yeah. So does that mean it's two public hearings, or is they both done at the same time, just in one after the other? Is that how it works? Yeah. Okay. But what the first thing that has to happen is it'll come back, when we get the two-tier system in, it's going to come back to this table for a recommendation to have a public hearing and development variance.
Correct, Your Worship. It would go first and second, public hearing, third and adopt would be subject to approval of a variance. Variance would send go out to the neighbors for comment, and council would make a decision based on that.
Okay. You ever got it?
Well, I'm just thinking about this one, Your Worship. I think the preference would be that there be a hearing on a proposed variance at the same evening as a public hearing to zone it, so that the neighborhood's informed that the implication of the council support of the zoning amendment, realize a reduction to the required off-street parking is also in the offing. They don't find out after the public.
It would, yeah, it would be made clear, Your Worship, through the reporting process and the public hearing process that this particular one would still be subject to a variance. You could give first consideration of the variance at that same time. It's just you can't physically adopt the variance until the zoning, or you can't physically adopt the zoning until the variance has been approved. So one's just got to come before the other.
It's all clear now.
You're welcome.
That's why we don't give you a microphone. Is there any other comments or questions on it?
Am I able to speak?
Absolutely, if I allow it to, yes.
So do you want me to go there, or?
It's up to you, Jennifer. You can just do it right from there if you want.
I just have a couple questions. I'm a little bit confused. So when we, our preference isn't to pay $600 for a development variance permit and have the possibility of it turned down prior to the public hearing. That's a lot of money, considering that would be $2,400. We would request to apply for the variance if we made it past the public hearing. It's a little unclear if this is the first and second reading. Not super clear on that. Currently, we meet our application. We amended it to be 3 parking spaces as discussed at the last council meeting on January 23rd. This is our preference, to approach the public hearing with 3 spots, as we would not have to pay the $600 variance. Because we do meet the bylaws as we read them. City staff in the last report stated the required off-street parking space cannot be used as a driveway. To access this tandem space, vehicle would have to drive over a designated parking stall in the carport to reach the second space. To me, that isn't very clear. It's 2 tandem stacked spots with a second spot beside it. A parking area is an open area of land other than parking of vehicles. Parking space means a space within a building or parking area for the parking of one vehicle including driveways. In regards to subdivision development and servicing bylaw, all residential driveway accesses shall have a minimum width of 4 meters and a maximum width of 6. This bylaw isn't applicable to our situation, but it's an example of a bylaw that outlines the requirements for a driveway. What we are illustrating here is that in general, when a bylaw is required, the details are provided. Currently, our application does not require a driveway. Therefore, our proposed application for 3 spots should stand as it is. Zoning bylaw 12.6 that the city is referencing does not outline requirements for a driveway. A parking area is adequate. Our application is just a tandem parking area, not a driveway, so we're not seeing the need for a variance. In summary, we ask that council consider the 3 parking spaces as presented on January 23rd for approval. Our current application shows a 20 by 20 area for parking that meets bylaws. However, we also have the ability to increase that space to 20 by 27 if required. And then the 3rd parking spot is the tandem stacked parking area. This option would require no variance permit needed. The second option, if it is in fact determined that that is a driveway, which I'm open for discussion on that, we would like to apply for a variance to have 3 spaces as illustrated. And then the third would be what city staff is presenting, is the apply for a development variance to reduce the total number of required off-street parking spaces to 2 instead of 3. We're very proud of rebuilding our heritage home and would like to share it with the community and visitors to Relisville. We meet many tourists around town who share the same passion, and as we did when we moved here, and we want to be able to share the experience with them and guide them to enjoy the outdoor adventures. So yeah, just unsure about why the 3 spot doesn't work, because it wouldn't require the variance.
Well, I can only tell you what my own personal feelings are, and is that parking is the number 1 concern from the neighbors in the community on vacation rental. And I think that the reason why this has been allowed to go farther than initially is because it seems to me that you're not fitting it by 1 meter, or there's something about that.
For 2 spaces, we're 1.2 meters shy of only needing 2, which is like this much.
So my concern would
Or
be
3 works. Sorry, excuse me.
would be that we have to be extremely careful around this table in City Hall of varying parking for vacation rental, because it's one of the hardest things for people to supply. And it's since it's the number one complaint that we get from the neighborhood, you're going down a slippery slope of allowing it. Now, because it's real borderline with you, plus I think that the advantages for you is that it's a suite and you're going to be living on site, and that seems to have a lot more acceptance in the neighborhood. So, and I think that that's the reason why that this is being looked at and taken to where it is. But I think that we got to be really careful about varying parking on vacation rental, because it's a can of worms that everybody will want opened, and so.
But maybe Nigel can help to answer the stacked parking space. So you would have one spot for us and the second spot for us, the resident. And they're saying that you can't pull into the first spot because you're driving over a driveway. But those are just 2 parking spaces. So
Well, again, that's a whole other thing of what do you call legitimate parking? And I think anybody would agree that when you're pulling up to a house, a business, or whatever, if there's parking out in front of the street or in front of the neighbor's house that is more easy and more convenient, that's exactly where people are going to park. Why would I don't want to park behind somebody's vehicle when I can park right here, and that's where that slippery slope starts. And so, you know, you're going through reading a whole bunch of bylaw, which I don't have the benefit of having in front of me, so it's difficult for me to comment on things like that.
Right.
Okay, so, but again, it's up to council to decide, but, you know, this is the direction that we're going. I guess if you have disagreements or concerns, I would suggest that you set up a meeting with Nigel or Daniel and talk to them
thank you
one-on-one
very
about it. Rather, it's nobody around the table has that luxury of having everything in front of them to actually discuss it.
Thank you.
Mr. Whitehead, did you have a comment? Okay. So we have a motion on the floor, and I could get Councillor Brothers to read it again if anybody would like. Is there comments or questions that anybody has on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. We are just finished 11B. I thought I saw our councillor walk in here.
You go on to the last one.
So let's go to 11C then. Oh, he's there? Yeah. Okay, so then we'll go back. We'll do 11A. So we are just going into 11A, and this is on 306 First Street West. Councillor Orlando is declaring a conflict because of advertising?
Yeah.
And as the proponents are current tenants of mine, I'm going to declare a conflict of interest, and I'm going to hand over the chair to Councillor Brothers.
Let me read it from this.
Are you with us, Councillor Duke? You ready?
Yeah,
Ready?
straight from the airport.
All right. All right. Motion,
Driver dropped me off there.
part motion before council. Is there somebody who can make a motion?
Yes, I can. Oh, yeah?
Councillor
No, go
Duke?
ahead. Go ahead. Get her done.
Thanks, Your Worship. That development permit DP 2017-16 application for construction of a commercial building at 306 First Street West be approved.
Motion by Councillor, and any discussion on the motion? Or second, sorry, seconded. Not used to this. Councillor Nixon? All right, sorry. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Do we have a presentation?
Oh, sorry, we're doing a presentation, I didn't realize that. I'm just not used to doing this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, before you guys jump too far down the road here. This application is a 3-story infill development on this skinny lot here. It's on the 300 block of First Street West. Let's get a picture of it. There's a good one. It's the black building here. This structure would be an infill development. It encompasses 1,000 square foot basement, roughly 2,300 square feet retail shop on the main floor, roughly 3,500 square feet total shared office space proposed for the top second story, as well as a mezzanine above. Staff are satisfied and supportive of the building's design. It's unique and does have a modern look to it, but that meets the downtown commercial DP area guidelines in which new structures are to be sympathetic to the historical mass, materials, and colors of downtown heritage buildings, but not being imitational. I particularly like the novel setback on the first story here. Aligns with the little residence there that is also set back from the street. If the applicant was to put the building right out to the zero lot line setback, you'd have this little cubby hole right here of the neighbor lot, which could make a fairly dark space at night and could be quite unappealing. So that's a nice design feature to get away from that. The bulk of this report discusses parking requirements, cash in lieu payment prescribed in the zoning bylaw, and the fees and charges bylaw. The parking requirements per the zoning bylaw for this proposed building is 11 stalls. There's room on the property for 2 at the rear. Staff are supportive of varying the parking requirements, somewhat reluctantly from 11 down to 5. Staff are generally concerned predominantly with vehicle traffic associated with office space. Office use is a use that we want to encourage downtown, definitely, but it does have some of the highest impacts per square footage on parking requirements. If you think about if you're going into a shoe store, how much space of, say, shoes you need per one customer, whereas in a retail environment, it's how many people can you fit at desks, and you can get a lot more people per square footage into an office space rather than retail. So for that reason, staff are concerned with losing too much parking. The variance would bring the total fee in lieu of parking down from $180,000 to $60,000. The difference represents the lack of off-street parking, which will be made up on the street with additional demands for parallel street parking. So, you know, a lot of this report gets into the fact that there's no such thing as free parking, as much as we love to think that. Either parking gets constructed by an owner and they have to pay for it, or parking gets constructed by the city and a surface lot or underground parking or a parking garage or some sort of thing, and the taxpayer as a whole pays for it. Or you have an overall loss of the business economy downtown when parking is completely full and you've got a jammed up downtown. Generally, once your parallel spaces go beyond 80% capacity, so only 20% of the stalls left, people will start driving further away from your downtown and they may not stop. So these are reasons why staff are not supportive of the variance as proposed by the applicant down to 2 stalls. The way the resolution is proposed today, the applicants would still have an option to secure the their shortage of 3 stalls, either by arranging an agreement with the neighboring lot where there is space, or providing the cash in lieu amount, or some combination of the 2. I think I have one more note back here. I think it'd be prudent to remind council that varying the number of stalls down from 11 to 5, that this would average out the total cost per stall of $60,000 over 11 total stalls to a total cost of $5,400 per stall. So that's another way of looking at it. Council doesn't have the ability to vary fees. Council can only vary the number of parking stalls. So with a building that could have up to 27 office workers, plus retail staff, plus retail customers, we feel that a variance down to 5 stalls is quite generous. And we could also guarantee that this building will increase demand for parking, street parking in the area, regardless of what this variance is. Whether they provide 11 stalls, there will be an increased demand for parking in the downtown area. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. We want business downtown, but we need to consider those impacts and how we mitigate those impacts, and that's what the intent of the cash in lieu amount is.
Are there any questions of Council, Mr. Whitehead, Councillor Duke?
Sorry, is it $20,000 a stall? Is that what the cash in lieu is?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, man.
Councillor Nixon?
Mr. Whitehead, thanks for your prompt answer this morning when I got a hold of you and asked about if we were able to have them pay that out over 5 years. And the Charter of British Columbia does not allow us to help business out that way. So I think that you tried to come up with a balance here to come up with a not free parking, but a balanced approach to what is expected.
And Mr. Whitehead, just looking at the list of the other municipalities and their amounts for, that you've put in the report, their amounts for cash in lieu, I see there's a huge range, and we're up around the middle of the road range. Is there any, have we looked at our costs and what are our charges and whether or not they really do fall in with the right range?
Yes, Madam Chair. We did look at that. $20,000 roughly would be about correct, looking at purchasing land in the downtown, plus leveling it, plus putting in servicing for drainage, that sort of thing, plus asphalt is very expensive, so paving it. So you would be looking at roughly $20,000 a stall. Parking doesn't come cheap. If you were looking at a parking garage or underground, you'd be looking at somewhere in the range of $40,000 to $60,000 a stall. A simple gravel lot like CP, let's ballpark $7,500 a stall, somewhere like that.
Any further questions of Mr. Whitehead? Maybe what we can do is just move to part 2 and then have our discussion after reading part.
Yeah, the notice is going to go to the neighborhood, so the intent is not for council to debate the merits of the variance, but to debate whether or not notice should be given and they will entertain it.
Yes. We'll move.
We haven't voted on it.
Can we respond to the parking issue before you move on to the development permit?
Is it
Like
appropriate?
resolve that before we get to
Public notice and comment will be sought with respect to the parking variance. And so at that time, then neighboring property owners are given notice, anyone within 100 meters.
No, we're at the actual property owners themselves.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
Yes, so at this point in time in the process, council's just considering the application. If they want to kill it now, or change it, or approve it as is. If they do that as part of the variance, if council chooses to do that, then staff would be directed to notify the neighbors for comment on the property. Then those comments would come back at a future council meeting for council to consider issuance of the permit at that time with information from neighboring property owners if they so wish to make comment.
And the owner's submission.
And the owner may submit then as well.
so we can't make comments on his application today?
No.
The recommendation is to give notice of the intention to approve the variance as recommended by staff. Typically, if it's not a negative recommendation, if it was to deny the application or the need for a variance, then the applicant is provided the opportunity to speak at that time. But there is a public process component of this part where the views of other neighboring property owners whose I guess, interest in land might be impacted by this. If they feel that the street, there'll be no parking available on the street, my business will suffer, so that all those things are heard together.
We can't comment on their application right now, in their argument for the parking that they're requesting.
No, but you can make that submission at the next meeting where the comments will be received, right?
Okay. I was misinformed. I was actually told that we were going to be offered an opportunity to speak with the staff in this variance this evening.
My understanding is that your opportunity to make comments with respect to the application is just at a later date. It's at the next meeting.
Yeah, typically an argument for that, but I understand where they're coming from. My only concern is that I guess representations are made to council in the absence of other community feedback, and council starts to move towards a decision in the absence of that statutorily required public input. Although if council wishes, they can authorize the applicant to speak.
Councillor Duke?
Yeah, these meetings are always more awkward than they need to be, and you guys are here and we're here. So my thoughts are, if they want to speak, I'm happy with them speaking. I don't think there's anybody around this table that doesn't want to see this building get built. It's definitely would be a great addition to the community for sure. But there's going to be constraints that we need to work within, and I think that what the staff's put together is a pretty good compromise. But I'd love to hear from you guys if other council members are open to that.
At the present time, I mean, I have no difficulty with allowing them to speak, and it just gives us more information, and that matter will be deferred to a later date, unless there are some downsides to doing so. Mr. Chabot?
No, after this meeting, there's nothing that would preclude the applicant from approaching council members individually anyway, so.
So if you'd like to come and...
It sounds like you're getting a stand.
Sorry, Councillor Nixon, you had something to say?
Do you need to call a vote on that, allowing them to speak? No? Okay.
Go ahead. And could you state your name just for...
My name is Michelle Bolin. I'm a business owner, a lawyer here in town. My husband is Salim Bedoya. He's one of the owners of Tantrum, and we purchased this lot with the hope of developing it, and this parking issue has really come to light. And I just wanted to comment on a couple of the notes with respect to the $20,000 fee per stall and the comparisons that they use. That list that he has with, Whistler being at $20,000, Kelowna being at $22,000, Banff being at $21,000. If you go to any of those cities, towns, you can't park for free anywhere in the downtown core. There's paid parking that passes some of the costs of creating additional parking onto the actual users of the parking. We in Revelstoke don't have any enforcement of our 2-hour parking limits in the downtown core. There's no paid parking. And this bylaw for the $20,000 per space, this only comes into effect with new builds or if they are adding a new floor onto an existing building. There are a handful of lots that are empty in the downtown core. There's 3, maybe 4. So that's putting this fee of creating new parking disproportionately on people who are looking to infill, develop land in the downtown core of Revelstoke. I fully agree that parking is an issue and it is something that needs to be raised, but $20,000 put on the developers when this is only going to affect maybe 3 or 4 lots when the city isn't doing anything as a municipality to recover those funds from the people who are actually using the parking. And yeah, they have reduced it from a proposed 11 spaces, but $60,000 on a space that can't physically fit more than 2 parking spaces. Like, we can't even put 3 there if we wanted to per their parking requirements. We're limited at 2. So anything above 2, and we're out of luck there. We can't, unless we build a parking garage or something else. And this is an infill development where there is a lot of loitering there. It's 2 doors down from one of the only nightclubs in town, and you go there on the weekend in the winter, and who knows what you're going to see going on in that lot. And I've had people comment saying, oh yeah, it'd be really great because I walk by there in the middle of the day and there's people urinating on the side of the building. And it's, I think developing the infill of the downtown core in Revelstoke is for the benefit of the entire community, and the way that the parking bylaw is set up is disproportionately affecting the people who are looking to fill in those empty spaces in our downtown core. And that's where we're coming from with the $20,000 fee per space. It's not that we think we're above this bylaw or that we shouldn't be worried about parking. It's the fact that we're disproportionately being the ones asked to pay for creating new parking because the city isn't looking to recover those costs from the actual users. And one final note, I have 2 more points. Their application says that Revelstoke is not at a point in its public transportation evolution where it's, sorry, this is in the fold of my notes here, where increasing costs by instituting pay parking or reducing availability would reduce demand. And I vastly disagree. I think that there would be a lot of people who wouldn't drive downtown if they had to pay to come downtown and work and pay for parking to work all day. You know, it's pretty easy to drive your car, and when you can come downtown and park it for free all day, if you're having to pay even $10 a day for parking, you're going to rethink that decision, whether it's snowing, raining, whatever the climate is. And I think that we're at a point where we need to start looking at this future and whether or not we want to just keep charging these businesses to create parking spots, or whether we want to make moves to encourage people to make different choices. And I think the community of Revelstoke in general is at a point where we should be supporting moves to reduce traffic in the downtown core by our residents, because we have enough tourists coming into town, and our residents should be encouraged to use other means to get to town to go to work, and leave those spaces for the people who are coming in to, you know, visit our shops or our restaurants or whatever. And I think, did you have anything else you wanted to add? I think that's all I had to say, is we just feel like it's been kind of disproportionate on us.
Yeah, probably just one more thing is, just think about like a little bit of the history of, well, I'm just really new into town, just 5 years here, but like I have done a little bit of research, and just like in 2009, this fee used to be just $2,500. So like just from like this short period of time, just bumping it up to 20 is kind of like, oh, like if it was 25, probably we wouldn't be having this conversation to begin with. Because like, yeah, that's fair enough. And like, as my wife say, like, that's like we're in a tipping point that we're already kind of like, believe it or not, we don't have like that much money to like full pockets just to hold on to this project and just see what happens. It's just like a matter of like $60,000 are gonna make like a difference for us as builders to actually be able, believe it or not again, to complete the project. Because like if you think about like how complex is like building something, there's not like always like as you expect. Like there's always a bunch of things that go wrong and go sideways, and that is like takes way more money than you kind of can't even plan for. So like is, as she said, it's not just looking aside from like which one a free pass here. It's just like we would love to kind of see like that the whole thing is more according to like the situations kind of thing.
And one other note, actually, the office space that we are proposing there, we have been in talks with the Mountain CoLab to expand there. And so the idea for that space is going to be more of a co-working space where, you know, most of the people who, I work at the CoLab right now, and the idea is like most of the people that work there do arrive to the CoLab by bicycle and alternative means, because a lot of them are not full-time residents of Canada necessarily, and there's people coming in and out, and it is a different type of work situation where people aren't as necessarily as reliant on their cars. So that's all we have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Any questions? No further questions? Mr. Chabot, just a question I have with respect to procedure. My understanding is we can't change, as Mr. Whitehead said, we can't change the amount. That's not possible. Just for argument's sake, if we were to consider changing or reviewing that amount or looking at something like that, if we were to do that, what would be the procedure?
Well, you probably want to do some market analysis of land costs and development costs to determine what the appropriate number would be. And I think it would be highly likely that the number would be 20,000 or more per space, not less. And so if the intention is to recover the true cost of off-street parking from development, I think we'd be looking at a different number. These other communities, kind of all over the map, most of them will be under the true cost because the surplus is passed on to them. Clearly, full cost recovery on that. And I'd like to receive increased tax revenue from development forevermore. I guess also to your point, because the recommendation is that there be a reduction to the required amount to a total of 5 required payments of 3 instead of 11, in a roundabout way, is being varied, and the contribution at 60,000 is a lot less per stall if they were all required.
Well, we have part 2 to the motion. Oh, sorry.
Can I just take out all the way, because I'm challenged by this as well, and, now we have the applicant's representation saying, there's good reason why it should be, just require us to provide 2. If council approves recommendation 2, they're in a situation where they're inviting comment, and the greatest amount of variance would be to reduce the required number of parking stalls from 11 to 5. But council could say, well, we're going to give notice, and this is where I'm taking the loud part, notice of the intention to reduce the required number of parking stalls from 11 to 2. And if based on input from the community, the actual amount approved after public submission could actually increase from 2 to 5. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's making sense to me. You're looking at me.
Yeah.
Through the chair, that would be my concern, thinking out loud again, is if council wants to move forward with the notice and then at a later point, the next meeting, vary it down, it would have to go back out again to the neighbors and say, hey, well, what do you think about this one?
Right.
So if council wants, if I think maybe this would be the time or prudent for council to consider. If council wants to consider waving it further down, this might be the time to do it, to streamline the notification process moving forward.
And then after the input, they could amend the requirements provided the variance didn't reduce the amount of parking stalls, it actually increased that when the amount the notice was given. Go back to saying, well, it needs to be 5.
I think you'd be getting on a shaky legal ground at that point because a variance allows you to vary up or down, right? So think of varying a maximum. You can vary a maximum setback higher. I think this is in absence of a parking study, right? This is what council is going to be continuing to look at time and again. We've got 1 to 3 more applications sitting on the back burners that will be asking this same question. What is the appropriate cost for parking to put on to the developer?
Councilor Duke.
I know that $60,000 sucks. I understand that. That's an easy one to understand. Nobody wants to put out $60K. The reduction of $160,000 is what it came down, because it was going to be $220,000 originally with 11 stalls, which would have made this project completely infeasible. So what the staff's done thus far has been pretty good. Now, from the applicant's perspective, if I were in your shoes and I was building this building, I would actually want to pay the $60,000, and this is why. Because I wouldn't want my property reduced to 2 lots. I would want to have it at 5 so that I could have options for doing stuff with that property in the future where I needed 5 parking spaces. It would actually increase the value of my property. I could put accommodation upstairs that would pay that off quite quicker than the collab, and then you would have the availability to do more things with that lot, knowing that you have 5 spaces. So as much as it sucks, it's almost an investment in your property's future with that respect, and bringing it down from the $220,000 to $60,000 I think is fair. And we are going to be sitting here having this happen as other infill lots come along, and if we reduce this lot, we are setting a precedent for reducing future lots. And if we reduce it all the way down to 2, we do have to think about the community. I completely agree with the applicant saying that we need to start charging for parking downtown and enforcing our parking a little bit more and recouping some of the costs that way. But in this particular case, just looking at this, that is my general thoughts on it.
Is there any appetite to amend part 2 of the motion in any way? So there's a motion. Is anybody prepared to make a motion, part 2?
I can bring the motion forward as it's written.
Councilor English?
That council give notice of its intention to consider the issuance of DP 2017-16 to vary sections 12.4 C and A and 13.3 1A of zoning bylaw number 1264 to reduce the number of required parking stalls from 11 to 5 and to reduce the required number of loading bays from 1 to 0.
Motion by Councillor English, a seconder. Councillor Nixley. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor? Motion carried.
Okay, so we're down to finance.
Wow, this seat's warm.
It was a hot seat. let me tell you.
Okay, so we are on 11C.
Your Worship, I'll bring forward this, that the guide to the 2018 draft budget and long-term financial plan guide be approved for publication and public comment as submitted or as amended, with the proviso that the guide be updated on the basis of changes that result from council decisions around the 2018 tax distribution.
Motion by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Nixon.
Just kudos again to staff for a nice document going out to the public that's easy to read, and hopefully we'll have some good, productive discussion with the public on this new budget with its new format.
I would also like to echo those comments. It's interesting changes that we've done in the budget process this year with having core and non-core and capital, and want to thank staff, but I also want to thank Burgard, is that how you say it? Ken Burgard, that was a consultant that helped us, and I think that this is going to make an easier system for future councils, and it's going to, I hope that it's going to be easier to understand from the public. So, Tanya, thank you, and Alan. Other comments or questions on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Item D.
I'm happy to bring that forward, Your Worship. The submission of an application to the UBCM Strategy Wildfire Prevention Initiative Fire Smart Planning and Activities Grant Program for $10,000 be approved.
Motion by Councillor English, seconded by Councillor Brothers. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Correspondence, request for support letter for grant application for Revy Riders. Anybody take any action on that? Councillor Brothers.
I'll bring forward the motion that a letter of support be written to the Revy Riders Dirt Bike Club for 2018 grant applications.
By Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Brothers.
I just wasn't too sure what a letter of support means. What type of support are we giving in our letter?
Well, I think it's more moral support than anything else.
So that's just what it'll say, is we get in support of.
We will talk a little bit about what they've done for the community, and
They've been running some great events, and people from all over come here. The community enjoys it, and we would support them getting an application for wherever they apply to in their endeavors to do more of these events. So
Great, thank you.
moral support with a great big, hee-haw. Help these guys out and girls. Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Let me Shuswap Regional District letter regarding economic opportunity funds for tourism planning project. Councillor Nixon.
Just, Your Worship, it's really good to see this in front of council and that it was approved by the CSRD board.
And the regional director.
And the regional director.
Ministry of Transportation response letter at Three Valley Gap. Any comments? Nice to see that it's on the radar screen, but I think that there's still a lot more has to be done.
Comment.
Yes, sorry.
Your Worship, I just want to thank you because I know you jumped on this right away, and I was pleased to see your email and your comments with respect to this, because I think as with the other highway stuff and the fact that we got those changing signs and everything else, it's because of the advocacy of getting something done for that highway, and I think we just have to keep that up, and thanks to you for doing that.
Well, and thanks for the ministry for stepping up and doing the right thing, it's, everybody's concerned about the highway, and everybody's concerned about traveler safety, and, unfortunately, this is where we live, and this is what we put up with, and, we have our highway rescue people that deal with this, and I feel for all those people that have to go to these scenes, and whatever we can do as a community and put pressure on the province to keep up moving in the right direction. And but anyways, I appreciate the comments, and I think that the government knows that this whole community is concerned about Trans-Canada Highway. Okay. We have the Social Development Coordinator's report for November and January. If anybody would like to bring anything up out of those reports. Is there any questions from media? That'll be you, Sean.
Just to double check with Jen Towser, the situation through 30, was that deferred again?
No, the motion was, as written, was supported. So it's basically in a queue when we set up the two-tier vacation rental. That's when it'll be brought back to this table. There'll be a public hearing and development variance application will be looked at, and so there's two processes that still have to be dealt with after the two-tier vacation rental is set up. Okay. Did I miss anything there, Mr. Whitehead? Okay. Anything else, Sean?
No, thank you.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to go in camera pursuant to section 90.1A and G of the Charter. Councillor Brothers, Councillor English, all in favor. Motion's carried.